Hello, Illinois Philharmonic fans, and welcome to my music studio here in England. In the near future, I'll be hopping across the Atlantic to come rehearse and perform with your IPO, but I thought I would send along in advance this video to help introduce you to the concert, to hopefully give you some insight into how the program came together, some of the connections between the pieces, and what I find special about each of them. You could actually trace the genesis of this program back over 15 years to about the year 2000, which was when the great American violinist Hilary Hahn released a new recording containing two violin concerti. First, Samuel Barber's Violin Concerto, one of my personal favorites, and a new concerto by the American virtuoso double bassist and composer Edgar Meyer. Now, I'm always excited to hear a new American violin concerto, because, as you may know, the list of American violin concertos that have securely entered the repertoire is not a very long one. And so I was so excited to immediately fall in love with this new concerto by Edgar Meyer. I think you'll discover that it has both an amazing gift for sincere, touching, lyrical melody, which you hear right at the opening of the concerto, as well as lots of rhythmic verve and drive in other passages, which is very visceral and exhilarating. So ever since I first heard this piece, I've been dying to get a chance to perform it. And a few years ago, I started thinking more seriously about what kind of program I might build around it. This brings me to something I haven't yet mentioned about Edgar Meyer, which is that while he's one of the world's great classical double bass virtuosos, he's also someone who loves to make music across genres. And in particular, he has a history of collaborations in the bluegrass arena. And this is something that I think you'll hear in his concerto. In particular, in the second movement, there are a number of passages that have a real bluegrass fiddling twist to them. So, given this connection in the concerto to American folk music, I was looking for an opener to pair with it that would have some kind of similar connection. And immediately I thought of Aaron Copland's Buckaroo Holiday. Buckaroo Holiday, of course, comes from Copland's ballet Rodeo, which takes its inspiration from the history and culture of the American West. As the title suggests, it's about a bunch of cowgirls and cowboys on their day off having a rambunctious good time. And to give it an extra bit of authentic flavor, Copland does use an actual American folk song. It's a very colorful and kind of bawdy folk song in its lyrics called If He'd Be a Buckaroo by His Trade, which you'll first hear in a trombone solo, and then Copland kind of slices and dices it as the piece continues. The other thing about Buckaroo Holiday is that it's a fantastic way to open a concert. As you would predict from the title and from the story, it's got an incredible celebratory energy and joy to it. And if we on stage are doing our jobs right, by the end, you should be all but dancing in the aisles. But if we can persuade you to stop dancing and return to your seats, we'll then continue the concert with Edgar Meyer's Violin Concerto. To perform the concerto, we have a young rising star violinist by the name of Tessa Lark. And what's particularly exciting here is that Tessa, like Edgar Meyer, has impeccable classical credentials, but also a background in bluegrass music. And so I think she'll really be the perfect fit for this concert. For the second half of the program, I was interested in finding a piece that, while it didn't have to be by an American composer, had some sort of connection to America and potentially to American folk music. What I settled on in the end was Dvorak's Ninth Symphony from the New World, a piece by a European composer, but written during his American sojourn in the early 1890s. Many people have debated over the years to what extent one might reasonably call this symphony American in some way. There's no question that it does sit squarely in the European symphonic tradition in many aspects. However, Dvorak did make some efforts to encounter the American folk tradition and various types of American folk music. One can make a case that he was influenced by American Indian legends and perhaps American Indian folk music, and almost certainly African American spirituals in particular, an influence that you can detect in the second movement, the justly famous slow movement of the symphony. In the end, I like to think of this symphony as representing that great American ideal of a melting pot of influences coming together to produce something new and exciting. In this case, a symphony that has been enchanting listeners for well over 100 years now. I hope you'll join us on April 8th to hear the Dvorak Ninth Symphony and the rest of this program, American Perspectives.